Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be celebrating a special event, Brewfest. Yes, it sounds like a lot of fun. It's because it is. But it's also going for a good cause. But I will let our guests talk about it, particularly our guest, Dr. Les Lockridge. And I'll let you introduce your guest.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's true. We're going to have Brewfest on July 23rd. It's going to be at Kingdom Brewing, and it's going to be a fantastic event. It was great last year. Ask anybody that went. Everybody had so much fun. We're going to have great food, the best barbecue you've ever had. Obviously, we're going to have excellent beer. We've got a lot of live bands that are kicking in, some time to entertain everybody. Hopefully, there'll be some dancing. There'll be silent auctions. It's just a great time. Everybody has an awesome time. And this being a completely local event, all of the funds that are raised are going to stay 100% local. They all benefit the Patient Caring Fund for NECO, and that Patient Caring Fund goes 100% to local patients. Mostly cancer patients, but it's also utilized by some of our primary care patients, some of our psychiatry patients. It's money that's set aside to assist with the unseen healthcare costs like prescriptions, co-pays, even gas to get to appointments and treatments, and a wide variety of other things. It's really a great charity. It's one that I'm very proud of as a totally charitable aspect of our clinic. And
what does NECO stand for, though?
Northeast Kingdom Hematology Oncology, NEKHO.
Okay.
And this is our 5th year in existence and our 2nd year of Brewfest. And everybody should come check it out. It's going to be a great time.
You're going to have a natural light there.
I'm not directly involved with the beer selections, but if you ask Brian that, you probably want to duck.
Yeah, I know my radio man. He's a natural light man. So,
I'm sure that he'll find some beer to his taste. The brewery makes all types of beer from very light to very dark, and it's all pretty good. Everybody's got their own specific tastes, of course, but Brian does a good job with basically all his styles.
Now, here's a question. Since you're a doctor, so is it true that 2 beers a day is good for you?
There's a little bit of controversy about that. I think just about everybody agrees that 1 beer a day is probably good for you.
Yeah, but can you put them all? How about if you don't want to drink during the week? Can you do it all in one set and still get the same benefits?
I don't think anybody knows that, but if you want to start a study, you could be subject A.
Okay, and your guest today is?
My guest is Marilee Daigle, who I'm very grateful to for coming on this program. She's one of our patients in our clinic. She is a survivor. I'm going to let her tell her story. But Marilee has been through cancer diagnosis, been through the treatment, and been through the recovery. So she's a real soldier. And she's been benefited by the Patient Caring Fund, and she's very, very active in Brewfest. And in fact, she's the coordinator for the music. And we're really looking forward to the bands that she's arranged for this year.
So, well, first of all, you're cancer-free now?
Yes.
And do you give at least part of the credit to this guy?
At least part.
So do you want to talk a little bit about your diagnosis and how it all came about, and then how you how you came on to meeting Les or Dr. Lockridge?
Okay. I actually happened to know Les prior to this diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And I came across a a breast lump totally by accident, pretty much. I can't say that I did a good job of, breast self-exams in the past, and I actually didn't take great caution when I first discovered it, and I kind of let that go for a period of time. But then it reached a point where I decided it was in my best interest to, research further. So I did go to my gynecologist, who in fact actually could not detect something on her own. But thankfully, through good sense, continued the process. So I had, all the testing, the ultrasound, the mammograms, etc. And it was pretty clear right away that we were dealing with something of concern. And that process, it's almost like a surreal type of thing that takes place. You're not even like fully aware or conscious when a doctor is coming to you and saying this is something of concern and we need to research this more, and there's a such and such chance that this could be cancerous, and so when that took place, you're kind of stuck in a state of shock, and it's really hard to process. It's hard to move forward, but I knew that Les was an oncologist, and I started my care in Morrisville, and I was like, I trust Les as a friend, and I think I could probably trust him as a doctor as well. So I made an appointment. I made a point to become his patient, right, because I thought maybe knowing him would be beneficial to me.
So do you think when you didn't go to the doctors at first, do you think you kind of knew what it was, but you maybe didn't want to hear?
You know what? Actually, no. I think
No.
I took the other thought process,
Right.
like, because women do have lumps and bumps all the time. They have, fibrous tissue, right, and I think I was the other way. This isn't happening to me,
Right.
because I'm not that there's an age to put on it, but I was not 50 yet,
Right.
so it wasn't on my radar. No.
Right. So how advanced was it?
It was 2-centimeter tumor state. I'm confused about the staging.
So was it a serious case
Stage
of
3.
cancer? Was this something that you said, we've really got to move?
All cases of invasive breast cancer are serious. Of course, any oncologist is going to preface their statement like that. That's just form. Marilee's case was advanced.
It had moved to the lymph node,
which makes it, by virtue of that, automatically stage 3 or above.
Right. So, and how did you have insurance, or were you on your own?
I happen to be on Medicaid just because of my own personal circumstances, but what I would add to that is that it very clearly, that type of diagnosis can financially devastate, right, anyone of good means or not.
Right. Because there's a lot not covered by insurance.
Well, it's also very limiting. For one, you're sick a good part of the time. You're exhausted. You're mentally drained. You're physically drained. If you're undergoing treatment, you have to have all kinds of time to go through that process. It takes hours. It takes weeks. It takes months. And I had to undergo radiation, which involved driving to St. Johnsbury every single day for 6.5 weeks, which turns into like a half-day process, So you can't work a regular job, You're really not able to dedicate or commit to a regular job. So I would say it took at least a chunk out of my life, a year's chunk. And really and I don't know that you ever really recover any of that. So I did want to let the public know that I am a recipient of these funds. I was provided many gas cards, which pretty much covered all my traveling expenses to St. Johnsbury, and that was a concern for me. It also, it's wear and tear on your vehicle. You have to try to stay strong, so you need, nourishment, food. So then, you had to get something to eat. I had some a lot of physical discomfort. So they paid for massage, and I also see there's also a woman that works on my body structurally and muscularly, because I have a lot of you have a lot of residuals from treatment. I'm very, very lucky, but you still have residuals, and they did cover me pretty much in every way, and I'm very grateful, and I'm glad to see that go on to someone else who's in the middle of it.
Right. So how long have you been an oncologist?
I graduated from medical school 20 years ago this year, in fact 20 years ago this month, and went straight into residency training, which was the beginning of my oncology training. You do 3 years of residency followed by 3 years of fellowship. I've been at it for 20 years. I've been seeing these types of patients intensely or even exclusively for 17 years, and I've been fully trained now for 14 years.
Right. And so this hurdle that people with cancer have to face, the financial hurdle, that really isn't anything new either. You've probably been watching people jump through this. Do you think can that affect that worry in itself? Does that, if you're worrying about finances, can that affect treatment?
Yeah, there's no question that the psyche is very tightly bound to physiology. I guess, first of all, I should say it isn't new that oncology treatment is expensive. That's not a new thing in any way, but it's become a lot more pronounced since I've been actively practicing. As an example, a pill that was developed for multiple myeloma, when it was first introduced following its clinical trials, it ran something in the range of $25,000 a month. Those types of expenses had not been seen before. Plus, the technology is beyond what we've had for the entirety of medicine. Oncology has really been at the forefront of scientific advances over the last 20 years in medicine. Recombinant DNA technology, growth factors, monoclonal antibody technology. Very, very effective stuff. Really a pleasure to work with because it limits the downside of cancer care. But very expensive, extremely expensive technology. But to return to what you said, it's really hard to quantify what a good attitude and a clear and focused mind add to somebody's health, particularly when they're going through something as bad as cancer treatment and cancer. I had a patient when I first started practicing in Rhode Island who, the day I met him, honestly seemed like there was more cancer than patient. And he lived for about 2.5 years on what seemed like will alone. So you can't overestimate how important that is. We do know that people that are under undue emotional stress have some degree of immune compromise, and immune compromise, immune surveillance is all about, is what cancer prevention in the body is all about. So yeah, it's important, it's extremely important, and that's really something that these patients don't deserve to have on their plate at the same time as fighting for their lives.
Right. So how much did financial concern worry you, before you found out about
Well,
this?
I consider myself lucky in many ways as opposed to some. And I did want to throw out that if I had been responsible for all my treatment payments and visits, it would have been upwards of $200,000 at least.
Right.
And I'm very, very fortunate, because I happen to be on a low income bracket, that most of that is covered. But it's all relative. Like when you don't make much, even a minimal amount can be a lot,
Right.
And I was accustomed to working a lot and a lot of jobs and providing for myself, and I became very limited.
Right.
I still am to a degree.
Right.
So it's just incredibly sad and unfair, that you're given, you're fighting, and then you have to be concerned about these situations as well.
Right.
Yes.
Now, I know this Brewfest is a community event. Like, there's only 2 other people in this room, myself, and I believe I'm one of the sponsors, and then Todd Pronto, the producer, and he's one of the performers at the event. So is that pretty much the way it is? Just a community, this is like a community event.
Well, we're a family, I think. When you become a patient within a practice,
Right.
the staff and the patients, we all become a family.
Right.
And the extension of ourselves, our friends and our family, also become part of that family.
Right. So when is Brewfest?
It's July 23rd. It's at Kingdom Brewing in Newport Center, and it's going to go from 1 to 6.
Right. So is there a fee for this?
Yeah, there's a ticket price, but you get quite a lot for that.
You'll even get to see Todd Pronto, the producer of this show, perform.
That's right. You get to see the famous
Ye-
Todd Pronto, and I understand that he's got a fiery set for us, so I'm looking forward to that.
Right. And the other thing that we have in common set in here is my father-in-law, as you know, passed away of cancer. And then just about a year ago, Todd's mother passed away of cancer. So, you can't really talk to anybody that hasn't
Everyone's
been
touched.
touched by
Everyone's touched.
in some form.
6
Especially-
degrees.
Yeah. We don't need 6 degrees of separation in the kingdom to get to somebody that's immediately been affected by cancer. And we're a very tight community, and I think that's really the basis for it. Everybody essentially knows everybody else, and knows everybody else's family, and knows everybody else's vocation, and knows everybody else's friends. And because of that really efficient conduction system that we have here for communication, everybody gets hit when bad things happen.
Right. So this is taking place out at Kingdom Brewing.
That's right. Yeah,
Explain where that is for the people.
it's a beautiful facility over in Newport Center. Its access road is right past Wayne's Snack Bar, just before the Missisquoi Valley Arabian Horse Barn. And incidentally, they've been very generous and offered horse carriage rides for all the attendees from the parking lot, which is actually theirs, up to the actual Brewfest. So you get a carriage ride through the countryside as part of the cost of admission.
I thought sure you were going to say for people who overindulge, we're going to be getting our,
Well, that's possible too. That's the ride home.
Yeah, we're
That's
not-
the
we're
ride
not-
back.
But this
We're
isn't,
not riding that potential off, no.
on the serious side, this really isn't a drunk fest. This is a time to enjoy
It's a celebration
some good,
too.
yeah, good,
You know.
good brew.
Right, it's a celebration. This is excellent quality beer, and it should be savored, not guzzled. And we've got a really good crowd there anyway. It was all positive last year, and I fully expect it'll be the same this year.
You don't want to wallow in you don't want to wallow in that cloud, because you find how short life really is, and you have to celebrate and make the best of all the good moments. And I never really wallowed, I don't think, that much. I'm glad I didn't.
Right.
And I hope I never have to.
Do you ever look back though? Cause I've had different stuff with, with our children. They almost passed away, and I look back now, and I think, how did we survive it? Now, do you look back? Have you been able to look back and think, wow,
a little
that
bit, but you know what I liken it to, and this will probably get a laugh: childbirth.
Yeah, I know.
It's this dreadful, horrible experience that people say, oh, you'll never forget, you'll never forget that pain, you'll never forget that experience. But somehow it leaves you, and many are able to do it again. You know what I mean? Like if you survive something of that nature, I think we're designed to survive. It's a wonderful
tell
thing.
you, if men had to have babies, we would go extinct.
That's very likely. Yes.
There's no. This is my take on things. Now forget about your male ego, Les. Are women the stronger sex? I think they are.
Oh, am I loving
without a
this
doubt.
question?
Oh, without a doubt. They could take over the planet in a second. They just like keeping us around.
Yeah, I agree. Men can say all they want. You are the strongest sex. You might let us think.
No arguments from me, and I won't even let you think.
There's this much we do know. Women have a much higher tolerance for pain. Women have better endurance, and they can focus on more than one thing at a time much better than a man can.
So when you have a patient get their diagnosis of cancer, that must be pretty dramatic for them.
Yeah, you have to remember a lot of the time I'm removed from that particular moment because somebody else is making the diagnosis and then referring the patient to me. But because of the primary care, I do have to occasionally give out that kind of news. It's hard. It's very hard. But over the years, I've learned that the thing to do is focus on what's next. And I think that the patient will sense that and will come along with you as you go that direction on the path.
There's a lot of emotions. I mean, I cried a lot in office, probably almost every time.
So, but, we were talking about the expense of having cancer, but on the other hand, I know you once told me this is actually an exciting time to be in cancer research, to be a cancer doctor, because people are living. Like, I don't know if you can conjecture, but if this were 20 years ago, do you think she'd be sitting here, or what do you think?
Well, I can tell you this much. 20 years ago, we were using the same chemotherapies for breast cancer that we had for the 40 years prior to that. The efficacy was limited, but the biggest difference is the tolerability and the way that we administered chemotherapy and the supportive care. I can tell you that if Marilee was the average person, which she isn't, which I must say really nobody is, most particularly Marilee, if she was the average patient during the course of her chemotherapy regimen, she would have been admitted to the hospital 5 or 6 times for fever or dehydration or intractable diarrhea or intractable nausea and vomiting. These things rarely happen now because of the advent of growth factors, really excellent nausea medication. I could say since I've been in Vermont, which is now 10 years, I've admitted fewer patients than I can count on one hand for nausea, vomiting, dehydration type things. And even when I was in training, we knew with some patients that we would infuse them on Friday and we'd come back to work on Monday and they would have been admitted to the hospital for those kinds of problems over the weekend, for sure.
Well, I had a friend, 20 or 25 years ago. He was, I thought at the time he was like this old guy because he was like in his 50s. Because, when you're 25,
Thanks.
no, but you know what I mean.
Yes,
when you're,
I do.
That's
I'm in my
everybody at
50s.
this table.
Yes, I
Right,
do.
but when you're 25,
I know. Yes,
you
my
think,
son thinks we're
You think
ancient.
it's like, but he was just, a tough lawman, federal guy. And I remember saying to him, I said, what does chemo feel like? And this is like, I said 20, 25 years ago. He said, have you ever walked out in front of an 18-wheeler and let it run you over? And that was what it was like back then. I understand it's a little bit better, and he did pass, but now he said at that time chemo was just horrible. But they've come a long ways.
Well, we've come a long ways in terms of agents, dosing schedules, supportive care, that sort of thing. But chemo is still chemo.
So you maybe it's not like a 18-wheeler, but you might be running over by
It
by a
feels
pickup
like
truck.
take the worst flu you ever had. Okay, we've almost all experienced that, and you get to feel that after every single treatment for a good week and a half,
Right.
and you start to feel better
Yeah.
by the time it's time to go through it again,
Right.
and you just do this repetitively. And like I said, I was very fortunate. I was very lucky that my treatment did not have to extend past the time that it did. And you know what? In fact, I did say at the end, he had intended for me to have 7 treatments, I think, and I said,
It's 8.
or 8, and I said, I'm done at 7. Like, I'm done. I made that choice because I just didn't want to go through anymore.
Okay, we only have a couple more minutes left. What more would you like to say about Brewfest? And again, the date and the time is?
Date's July 23rd. The time is 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock. We're going to have some excellent music, Todd included. And the food will be as good a barbecue as you can have. We're getting a lot of food donations from local businesses. Of course, as I mentioned, this is a very community event. Ray's Market in Irisburg, Bros Slaughterhouse, Northeast Kingdom Processing. They're all contributing meats and meat products. We're getting side dishes from a lot of the local vendors, Westside Deli, Newport Natural, the East Side, and essentially every aspect of this is local and locally contributed. If you like Vermont wares, this is the place to be, and the beer is excellent.
And I think one thing good about your fund and the Halo Fund is there's no administrative overhead, because that's the reason I think your fund and the Halo Fund does so well, because people are really tired of giving money to an institution, which then by the time it gets done,
And
going
some
through-
reputable ones.
Yeah, right.
Some very reputable ones.
Right, and the money stays local. All your money stays local, like the Halo.
100%.
Halo helped me tremendously too. I
Right.
want to give them kudos because they did.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they are a sponsor of Brewfest, and they work very closely with us, and they benefit our patients beautifully.
Right. Okay, and your
I
final
just want to
words.
say one more thing. I also want to mention that this event appeals to the masses and all ages, from young children to seniors. The music runs the gamut of styles and types, from old-time country, bluegrass, folk, jazz. So it's appealing to the masses. And
And I think a good thing to mention too is, if you don't drink, because
It's
the
not- yeah.
producer Todd doesn't drink alcohol,
Good
and
for you, Todd.
he's still performing. So
Absolutely.
just because I'm sure
It's
there's
just
going to
a
be
piece of it.
there's
It's
gonna-
just a piece
There's
of
going to
it.
be non-alcoholic
Absolutely.
beverages, and there's
Yeah.
actually going to be a place, even activities for kids.
That's right. We're going to have face painting and other activities. So everything from young children that can just walk all the way to the elderly that can barely walk. We're going to have something to do for everybody and something really enjoyable. We're very excited about it.
Okay, well, we've got to wrap up the show.
I
And,
want to say one more thing. You mentioned the administrative costs were kind of out of the picture for these funds, and that's sort of true. There is administrative overhead, but in our case, it's basically all donated by the people that work at our clinic that look at this as their chance to help their own family, and I have to give them a lot of credit and thanks.
right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.